we got breaking news here with the Blockbuster Brothers. Today we are talking about the acquisition of Warner Brothers and the battle that is going on for it. I thought it was over, but it doesn't appear so. Steven, we need you to go over the timeline. Provide us with some facts, please.
Absolutely. That's what I do. Okay. So in the last 5 days, a lot has happened. Today being December 10th. On December 5th, the board of Netflix and Warner Brothers unanimously approved Netflix acquiring Warner Brothers for $82.7 million. On that news, the stock jumped 15% for Warner Brothers, 8% for Netflix. Ted Sarandos calling it a big day for storytelling. Okay, December 6th to 7th, there's a ton of backlash. We're talking about it. People are talking about it, and Hollywood unions are not happy about it. Writers Guild, Director Guild, they're criticizing potential job losses and reduced competition. Moving on to December 8th, David Ellison's Paramount launches a $108.4 bid.
Oh, only $108.
Yeah, only
I saw like NLE Chopper put in like a bid for like $75,000. That's just, some rapper, but what, $107 billion?
$108.4 billion.
Wow.
It's $17.6 billion more in cash than Netflix. So now what that means is, like, when I read the news, I was like, oh, it's done. No, it's not the case. So now the board of Warner Brothers needs to review Paramount's bid. And this will take time. Okay, so that happened on the 8th. Netflix dismisses it. We're super confident. We're very, we got good synergy. It's not going to be a problem. And this, keep in mind, Netflix would inherit Warner Brothers' full theatrical release operations, including its pipeline of films, distribution network, and box office commitments. Okay. December 9th, a class action lawsuit in federal court seeks to block the deal, arguing it eliminates a key rival amongst competition. Then December 10th, Netflix downplays Warner Brothers games as relatively minor in the deal. So this is kind of something that's been coming out, where Netflix is not really seemingly valuing Warner Brothers games as much as other people deem it to be. So
what, their video game department?
Correct.
Wow. And so they're saying that what? They're like we're just gonna not do anything with it. We're just gonna like acquire it and just be like, hey, this is kind of a waste of money.
I think the news seems to say that Netflix is kind of like, yeah, it's a part of Warner Brothers, but it's not like a big deal. AKA it's not worth. And that's interesting because that Harry Potter
legacy game, they have the Batman games. There's a lot.
So I don't know, but anyway, so that's it. So as of December 10th, that's it, and it's a battle right now between Paramount and Netflix. Obviously, Netflix seemingly is the leader, and online sites that like Kashi, or I can't remember exactly what it is, but they say it's a 60-70% chance that Netflix does in the end acquire it, because obviously there's a lot of red tape and
because they already previously agreed to it, because they agreed to the Netflix acquisition, and now Paramount's come in and say we want to bid to post-mortem, and they're like, okay, can we reopen it? And then in the midst of those two battling for the acquisition of Warner Brothers, we have people coming forward saying the acquisition of either of Warner Brothers would be antitrust and develop a monopoly, which, I can kind of see that. The industry is getting smaller and smaller by the day, and I'm out here in LA, and it's a ghost town out here. People are struggling to work. Unions aren't accepting new members at all. It's really not a career you can get into at the moment. And, I've got a question. Like, Netflix is $13 billion in debt. How do they have this much money? I just worry, because who's the jabroni that runs Netflix? He was saying stuff about like people want to experience movies at home. It's like, no, it's just that things are expensive. And if movies are crap, which they've been for some time now, people are going to stop going to the theaters, and your model has undercut the whole process. So you're having the people that kind of are hugely responsible, and you know what? I'm not going to go and blame Netflix for seeing something, an opportunity in the market and providing people with alternatives to watching more movies. I will always support people being able to watch it, especially in this time when it's so expensive. But I still think that there's such beauty and power and community to having these theatrical leases. To lose it, we've already lost DVDs. That's not coming back. And to lose theatrical release, I just don't think is streaming numbers, are they making enough to keep these alive? And maybe it has to downsize, and this how it goes, where you were spending too much money and you got to tighten up the ships, do smaller productions, and be a little bit smarter with it. But it's scary times. I also was seeing the Saudi Arabia group was interested early on with Warner Brothers. So I know that they were going to keep, Netflix wanted to keep, the HBO name and everything. But I'm still kind of mixed on how I feel about this. It obviously is pretty concerning.
It's a weird one. I agree. I have mixed feelings because, well, let's just start. I'll just start with reacting to what you said. Is the angle is not that is not the angle that CEO or whoever, Reed Hastings, I can't remember who said it. That is not the angle to take. The angle to take is not going, well, people just want to stay in. That will and that infers that people don't like going out. And that's the opposite of what people like. People forever and ever, they like to go out to dinner, they like to go out to a play, to a movie, to the park, like literally whatever it is. It's just, I think you're right, is it's expensive. There's been a crap ton of bad movies for about 5 years, maybe even longer than that. Obviously there's some good ones in between, but just not like a lot of indie stuff that feels like it has a lot of heart. And so these factors are hurting this. And just as a little history lesson, so I remember this from my film school days and all that. It's not like there's been a million studios in Hollywood. There's always been 4, 5 forever. So in 2025, Warner Brothers, Walt Disney, Universal, Paramount, Sony Pictures, these represent 80 to 90% of domestic box office annually in the United States. Okay. So if Warner Brothers would be gone, there would be 4 left. And that is no different than historically in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s. They are always going to be mega corporations that are making films and TV and stuff like that. So the idea that you would say, well, that's a monopoly, but it's okay if Paramount buys it, is completely flawed, because if you look at the list of the stuff that Paramount owns, they are already a monopoly. And I think one of the things that Netflix says, they go, well, it's not really eliminating competition so much as the market is much broader, which I think he's got a very good point here. Video games, Minecraft, YouTube. It's not as if Netflix is acquiring Warner Brothers and now taking 75% of all of what people watch. It's probably far less, maybe 10, 14, 15, whatever it is, because they are behind YouTube already. And that's been a main thing that Netflix has been focused on.
So here's a question I gotta ask you and everybody else who's watching, which we appreciate you do. Please follow, like, subscribe. I hate that jargon, but I guess you got to do it. No, you're not going to get it if you don't ask. So you got to ask. But here's my question to you and everybody. So if the deal has to go through, would you rather Paramount or Netflix have it? Have Warner Brothers?
I think the success of Netflix has been so groundbreaking and clear, and their impact on society, that I would choose Netflix, with the caveat being you better keep you better keep that distribution network of theatrical releases alive, because everybody who loves movies is not going to get behind you when you say, oh, well, people just want to stay at home. That's BS. Yes, some of the time, for sure. But if you're not giving people good enough reason to go out, separate from the expenses, you got to put good movies in the theaters. And I'll tell you what, there's been a lot of Netflix big movies that we've talked about on previous episodes that would have flopped in the box office, and they spent so much money. One being The Electric State with Millie Bobby Brown, which was beyond average. And that is not the only one. So, Brian and I have been talking recently in the last 6 months. Movies are now heading in a good direction again. I really feel confident in that, and that's a very exciting thing. I just hope that this won't. I want the best. And Warner Brothers. It's weird to see something as big as Warner Brothers being acquired. That's just a weird thing.
Yeah, it is, and it's been passed around. Discovery had it last, and it's kind of there's still it's been changing ownership for some time now. So this is just, I think, something that's really catching mainstream, and I think because Netflix has scared a lot of the industry, and has really changed the game. I personally don't really care for Paramount, and from what it seems like, creators have really strongly opposed them, and it seems like that would be even more of a monopoly than Netflix. Really, if I had to kind of centralize this to something that might be a turning point, is I really think the most powerful person for the people right now is actually Christopher Nolan. He's the leader, the president of the Directors Association of whatever, the guild, the Directors Guild, and he's also Warner Brothers prize director who brings in hundreds of millions of dollars. He's one of the few guaranteed box office success in the game, period. He might be the only director that has that draw right now. Who's like, you put out Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer would have flopped if it was anybody else.
Correct.
But and maybe that's too bold of a statement.
No, I don't think so.
But we got to give Christopher Nolan, he has that pull. So
Yep.
he has massive money, and if he walks, and he's always had a relationship with Warner Brothers, and they've kind of dogged him here and there. And he's even, I know he had some stage problems with a recent production, and was like, they were trying to charge him, and he's like, I'm gonna never work with you guys again. And I think that that's a relationship that they can't afford to lose. And if Netflix can find a way to make Christopher Nolan the head of Warner Brothers theatrical department, I think that this could be a real positive thing. If Netflix and Christopher Nolan because Christopher Nolan's the right person in this seat. He has absolute love for all formats of cinema. He's the bridge to the traditional, so the traditional isn't lost in this.
Yeah.
And thank God he's making money, because that's the only thing they care about. And unfortunately, he's the only leverage that really the theatrical releases have, especially out of Warner Brothers. So I really put a lot of weight into Christopher Nolan. He's kind of the Dark Knight, and he's gonna have to Batman this whole scenario, because I think a lot weighs on this, and I know he just I don't know the man at all, but from all the interviews I've seen him, and from the way he talks, I believe that he's going to fight with all of his might to keep theaters alive. The man's destroying IMAX cameras left and right. He's shooting on cameras that nobody else is, and he understands how important theaters are, and is a true cinephile. And thank gosh he's been making money, because I really think he's really the only. Everybody else is so like for business. That's all like society. We see it left and right. Right. These, not that Warner Brothers was this like mom and pop shop. It was done the day, the brothers, because that's what it originally was. The brothers giving like Stanley Kubrick and a couple of directors a shot, when nobody else would. But those days are gone. And it's just, how do you keep people who are passionate about the product in the industry that they're in, and not just about making a buck? And I know they got to make a buck, but I think that this is Christopher Nolan. Get the Batman suit on. He's got to freaking save the day. I think he's huge. I hope he's just heavily involved in this process.
He is the people's choice. Like people that love film support Christopher Nolan, whether you like him or not. The guy cares. He's an auteur and he is a cinephile, like you said. So I think hopefully that would be unbelievable, because let's not forget, DC Studios is under Warner Brothers. So I would be at the theaters ready to watch movies that Christopher Nolan had a part in to some degree, even if it was under the DC umbrella. And now, real quick, I just thought about this. In TV, there has been two dominant forces over the last 10 to 15 years. Number one, not necessarily in order, but is without a question, is HBO. Okay, so you're talking about the shows like The Sopranos, The Wire, Succession, Game of Thrones, Band of Brothers, Chernobyl, Deadwood, 6 Feet Under, Veep, and True Detective. These are all
The Last of Us. They're always
right,
and
right, and there's more.
Deadwood,
and there's more. Right, and so with Netflix, they make more stuff with a wider variety of quality, I would argue, but they have mega hits. Okay, so Stranger Things, The Crown, Squid Games, BoJack Horseman, Black Mirror, Tiger King, Orange is the New Black, Mindhunter, Queen's Gambit. Those are all shows that had not only a little impact on society, had a massive impact on the culture of America, what we consume, and all that. So if you're looking at it from what studios can create really good television shows. Now, obviously, I think HBO is a better success rate because they don't make as many things, but those two are the leading ones. Yes, there are shows on Hulu and Disney here and there, but if you're talking about the last decade or so, it's kind of clear who the two front runners are.
Yeah, so maybe Netflix does deserve to be one of take Warner Brothers' throne as in the seat of one of the major, like the big five studios. So I think, again, it's just with great power comes great responsibility, and it's just scary, everything being already on the edge. It'd be one thing if this was happening in a time where the film industry was flourishing, but it's already on the ropes. So it's just scary, this type of scenario happening on a pivotal moment where I think it's Pandora doesn't go back in the box. I don't know if like these theaters will reopen again if they go out of business. COVID was already rough enough. We're just starting to get back. It would just be a bummer to see a huge regression, and maybe this is all a big overreaction, and that's how it goes. People like to speculate and worry, and you know what? I don't know. HBO wasn't like doing like killing it so much as of late, where I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong with it. I want to be optimistic. I'm dooming in my heart, in my mind, in reality, but
yeah, and it's
Christopher Nolan. Come on.
Yeah. Chris
come on, Chris.
Come on,
Chris. Get John. Call up Jonathan, get your brother in there, and just make sure that they just,
But I think in general, it's important to remember that this is nothing new. There has always been 4, 5, 6 major studios forever for the last 100 years. So it will probably, go over smoothly, I assume. But Brian's right with regards to the only thing on the brink in the media and TV and film world right now is the theatrical releases. And that's because people have been given a lot of slop for the last X number of years. But I am very hopeful that little movies like Marty Supreme and little things that are made with a reasonable budget that look good and have their own kind of breath and life to them, I think those are the movies that are going to bring people back to the theaters, not Aquaman 7 or another Iron Man reboot. I believe that's the case. People are sick of seeing a lot of average stuff, and I just that's just my opinion.
Yeah, and I'm sick of being blamed for the problem that's like people don't want to go to the theaters. No, don't blame me.
Right.
This is you making bad movies. Like, don't go
Correct.
and like make this assumption that we don't want to. We do want to go to the theaters. We want to go to the theaters to see good movies. Things are more expensive now, so your wiggle room for just spending our money on like goodwill of let's just give it a shot is gone. You got to bring us something good. Don't blame us for the lack of quality you've been giving us. Hey, let us know. You can disagree with us. We welcome all opinions. That's what we're here for. This is art at the end of the day. Nobody really knows what's going on. It is all speculation, but that's part of the fun. We appreciate you joining us for this news. Please give us your 2 cents, and we'll see you all on another episode of the Blockbuster Brothers.